life? Just one thing. My godson to go to college, become a doctor.
What's my dream? Retirement. Florida. That would be great. I've been cold too long.
You know what I'd really like? I'd like to be treated with some respect at work.
Sure, I've got dreams. Do you want to know what I dream? I dream of getting my family out of this dirty city. No drugs, clean air, someplace with schools, good schools.
To dream, to imagine, for yourself, your family, living differently, better, with security, with respect, with hope. Idle thoughts, impossible thoughts. A handful of Chicago janitors didn't think so when they got together in a cold water flat late one night in April 1902. They dreamed and dreamed big. About a union for the most abused and exploited workers in the country. Workers other unions wouldn't even organize, and they succeeded beyond their boldest expectations. What's a labor union for? What makes one more special than the other? Truth is, it's the same for any good and noble institution. What makes the difference is a great idea, a vision so big it becomes bigger than itself. For the Service Employees Union, that great idea, that vision, has been the notion that every worker, no matter how poor, how shunned, how invisible, every worker is entitled to the wages, benefits, rights, and respect that come from being a member of a labor union. In the 20s and 30s, that meant the working poor of the big cities of our nation, recent immigrants alongside the grandchildren of slaves, doing the dirty work of our society. In the 1940s, it meant thousands of hospital employees in the United States and Canada, workers who were horribly abused but denied the right to organize. In the 50s and 60s, it meant public employees, white-collar as well as blue-collar workers, unfairly blamed for every ill of the nation. And today, that great idea strikes a chord with a new generation of workers, from low-paid service employees to highly paid professionals, invisible to all except those they directly serve or care for. Home care workers in Los Angeles, office workers in Cleveland, nursing home and hospital employees in the Deep South and the Far North, janitors in Washington, Atlanta, Denver, and San Diego. It's here the Service Employees Union is still organizing to empower a workforce others have written off or forgotten. Early battles were fought with little more than human bodies. Today, those bodies are backed up with computers and sophisticated pressure strategies. But the rules remain the same. Never hesitate, even in the face of a corporate or government giant. Always extract a price, even when you lose. For nearly 70 years, the Service Employees Union has been a beacon of hope to workers others were unwilling to organize. And even now, with its ranks broadened with white-collar and upper-income members, the union retains a character created by its history. It's a character based on the kind of racial, ethnic, and gender integration that stems from the diversity of service work itself. It's a character richly flavored with the history and culture of 100 different nations. And it's a character which has placed the union early in the movements for civil rights, peace, and economic justice in Canada and the United States. The Service Employees International Union has now become the fastest growing union in North America, with 850,000 members. And from that cold water flat in Chicago, it has come to this, a modern headquarters serving more local unions than the original union had members. It's the vortex of a continental network that provides information and services to 300 locals in 45 states and 7 Canadian provinces. A nerve center that helps make sure old values are translated into new involvements, new ways of doing the business of the union. Research, communications, and education departments to keep pace as the service sector comes of age. 5 separate operating divisions to meet the diverse needs of members in healthcare, building services, public, clerical, and allied and industrial employment. And a safety and health department to represent them in Washington as well as in the workplace.
Well, what they say here, are you asking for infected waste or laundry? Here in Local 250 in 1984, some rank and file members who were very concerned about the AIDS epidemic and hysteria happening within the healthcare facilities got together, and we decided to put together some informational brochures for healthcare workers. And with the help of the International Union, we were able to publish them. And we are now in our 5th edition. We educate shop stewards so that they can better represent the healthcare workers in the union against needle sticks, about health and care safety committees, and to keep them better educated. AIDS is the #1 epidemic. I think everyone realizes that. And I think that the international and the local union have joined together, and we've created very positive things.
To provide additional programs and services, the union also operates legal, international affairs, and pension and health departments. But with all this, more than 50% of the dues income received still goes to fund organizing and field services, the programs of most direct benefit to most local unions.
What really makes this whole thing go is issues.
Our situation in Oregon is a good example of how the international and the local union can work together to handle a very difficult situation. The Neil Goldschmidt that we faced, or his administration that we faced across the bargaining table, was not the friend we thought we had elected. Not only were they saying there would be no salary increases, but they were talking about reduction in health insurance benefits, in other words, pay out of pocket for health insurance. We, after a considerable debate, settled on what we called the rolling strike. Our strategy was that nobody knew when, what agency would not have employees at the workplace. The first thing the International did was to provide us with money and professional assistance in developing our organizing plan. They provided invaluable research, statistics, background information. In the final stages, during the strike itself, we had personnel come that worked with members, were out there on the picket lines, keeping up the morale. In the final analysis, I think we reached settlement because our members were all in there together, working together. For the first time, I feel that our members truly think of themselves as a union. They understand what working together can bring them. They are ready for the next challenge. And of course, our next challenge is the upcoming elections and the next legislative session.
Last, and perhaps most important, the Service Employees Union has established itself as a major player in the worlds of legislation and politics, those twin arenas where the dreams of workers and their families are most often ignited.
So our job right now is to do the following. We meet tonight and collect your names as activists.
The service employees are a major political force here in the nation's capital. Not only are they a major force in shaping the agenda, but more importantly, they're a major force in making Congress look at that agenda and to confront it and to make Congress not run away from some of the very difficult decisions we're going to have to make about the future of this country as it affects not only the service employees' constituents, but our constituents generally.
So that's our story about a union with vision for people with dreams. And how do I know so much about visions and dreams? Well, I'm Yvonne Brathwaite Burke, and my father was a charter member of Service Employees Local 278 in Los Angeles. Union benefits and wages allowed me to grow up in a stable family environment. My father wanted me to go to college here at UCLA, and I got here with the help of a Service Employees Charles Hardy Scholarship. Later, I went on to law school and served 3 terms in the United States Congress. I'm a child of my father's dream, and I'm a product of his union's vision.
We're better together, helping each other, reaching out far, holding on tight. When the service employees unite, we're better together, close to each other, building a life, making a friend, knowing you. We got trust in ourselves, and we keep our heads held high. We got dreams for our kids, and those dreams won't die. We are one voice, we cry. We're better together, helping each other, reaching out far, holding on tight. When the service employees unite, we're better together, close to each other, building a life, making a friend, knowing you. Building a life, making a friend in you.
This is Canada. The famous and the not-so-famous spots we point to with pride. Awesome natural beauty, sleepy little towns, and centers of great learning. The nation's breadbasket, the seats of power, communication, and commerce. Sights and scenes we're known for and are proud of. But there's a side to our country you won't find on the picture postcards, and that's the people who every day make the world sparkle, who lift people up, who keep things running, who in ways that often go unnoticed make Canada a wonderful place to live. We're special people, and we make up a special union, the Service Employees International Union, 75,000 strong in Canada. Representing health workers, janitors, public employees, and clericals in 26 union locals from Montreal to Moose Jaw, from Vancouver to Thunder Bay, from Winnipeg to Wolfville. We're part of a proud labor movement that has made Canada a progressive society, with labor law protections in some provinces that are among the best in the world. We're people like Sue Redelar, who every morning bikes to work at Toronto's famous Royal Ontario Museum, where she guards the treasures of the Ming tombs. Or Gisèle Romain, a registered nurse's assistant for 11 years at St. George's Nursing Home in Montreal, who brings that special human touch to the care of those who are very old and often very ill. We're people like Bob Jones, a cleaner at Toronto East General Hospital, who after hours organizes sporting events for union families like his own. Agathe Arsenault, an activist in her local who got involved in the problems of part-time cleaners and whose goal is clear, to convince women to fight for their rights. And while the rest of the world sleeps, Jose Sebastiano, who cleans floor after floor in a downtown Montreal office. We're people from diverse backgrounds in many occupations, pulling together in a union that keeps Canada up and running, day after month after year. And we're part of a union that has always been a little different for reasons that reach way back into the cold, grim past of Canada's working class. Under colonial rule till 1867, workers were at the complete mercy of employers. As late as 1870, a worker could be imprisoned for disobeying an order. But once unions were legalized in 1872, labor lost no time in building its power, making its voice heard in Parliament and in the provinces. For over a century, organized labor has set a progressive agenda for Canada, winning protections and benefits for workers that are the envy of other nations in the Western Hemisphere. Like national health insurance, with the government paying 80% of the cost. Public pensions that are indexed to consumer prices. And labor laws that automatically certify unions when over 55% of the workers sign cards. It's no wonder that 40% of Canada's workforce is organized. It's no wonder Canada works. But these gains did not come easily. In labor's early years, many found themselves outside the unions looking in. Window cleaners in Montreal, building service workers in Vancouver, elevator operators in the stores, hotels, and lofts of Toronto. Hospital workers in Saskatoon, Toronto, and Montreal, putting in 90-hour weeks. It's here the Service Employees Union started in Canada in 1943, fighting for fair wages and hours for workers stuck at the bottom. Over the years, leading the fight that won Quebec janitors a guaranteed minimum wage. Lending strength to the pay equity and child care struggles to back up working families. And leading the way on common front bargaining for public employees. And in the face of government assaults, taking the cause of public employees all the way to the Supreme Court of Ontario and the International Labor Organization in Geneva. Winning pensions for nursing home workers. Fighting the tough fights and winning. That's what the Service Employees Union has been about since the beginning. So what does this all mean? It means that through it all, we've held to the idea that people from many nations, speaking many tongues, yet sharing a common dream, could improve our lives and those of our families through our union. We're a union that works, in a country that works. We're the Service Employees Union Canada, strong and growing.
South Africa, a land of harsh yet uncommon natural beauty, rich in raw materials and natural resources, endowed with arable productive farmland. Since the end of World War II, a nation blessed with booming manufacturing and growing modern cities. And since 1948, a country cursed by the most repressive social and economic system in the history of humankind. The system is called apartheid, and it is based on the color of one's skin. When whites first migrated to South Africa in large numbers, they were greeted with open arms by the native black population, showered with gifts of produce, goods, and even land. The whites at first behaved like model guests, but over the years, they began to dominate and discriminate against their hosts. When the Nationalist Party came to power in 1948, apartheid, which means separateness, was established as official government policy. Under this policy, 25 million black South Africans were permanently denied political and residential rights in the 87% of the country's total land area that is controlled by 5 million whites. Laws were passed to restrict the movement, residence, and employment of every black in South Africa, along with 3 million coloreds and 1 million Asians. Between 1960 and 1983, over 3 million blacks were relocated forcibly into squalid and overcrowded homelands. Since 1975, nearly 3 million blacks have been arrested for past law and influx control violations, and thousands have been arrested, tortured, and killed for in any way resisting. Since the most recent state of emergency was declared in South Africa in 1986, special regulations have been used to suspend laws, restrict the press, permit the police to arrest and detain without warrants, search and seize at will, all with immunity from prosecution. Apartheid, hardly a crucible for trade union organizing. But since 1979, when unions were first legalized, black South Africans have been organizing at a dramatic pace. Today in South Africa, nearly 12% of the black workforce is unionized. There are over 300 individual unions, claiming a total of just over 2 million members. Union organizing has been spurred by the fact that whites make about 5 times what blacks make, and that many black workers have to toil as migrants under intolerable working conditions. Conditions under which blacks live and work in South Africa are often the basis for their involvement in the struggle to improve the quality of life at all levels. Elizabeth Mbuto is a night cleaner who lives in Soweto, the largest Shanti area. While her working life is spent cleaning and servicing one of Johannesburg's most luxurious shopping and office malls, she lives in an area with no essential services. Her shack is a single room without electricity or running water, and the nearest toilet is over 100 meters away. Elizabeth only spends 6 hours a day at home, and a lot of that time is spent doing household chores, washing, cooking, and cleaning.
I leave at home at 3 o'clock, and then to the station I walk by foot to the station, and it takes me 30 minutes to get into the station. And then I catch a train from Juba Station to Faraday Station.
3 hours of Elizabeth's day is spent traveling to and from the Johannesburg City Centre, a building owned by the Anglo-American Corporation, South Africa's richest multinational company. As Elizabeth goes to work, the city empties. She leaves the city centre 14 hours later, as office workers and shoppers come back to the clean buildings.
I arrived here at work at 4:30 and then clock in. And then I started to work at 5:30 p.m. The hardest thing in this work, it is because we don't get enough rest and enough sleep, especially when you work at night. And that is the first disadvantage of working in the night. It affects my health. I can't see very well now. Before I used to see, and then my eyesight is getting finished. I feel a lot of backache, and then it makes me to have a high blood pressure.
Elizabeth Mbuto is but one of thousands of workers who clean Johannesburg buildings at night for extremely low wages and practically no benefits. And the cleaners, like thousands of other service workers, have begun joining black workers in mining and manufacturing in forming unions to help them fight back. The result is that trade union membership in South Africa has been increasing at a rate of nearly 5% a year, despite the fact that black trade union leaders and organizers are subjected to imprisonment, banning, and even death. When it became apparent to the South African government that a free trade union movement was the most serious threat to apartheid, many unions and their federations were banned from anti-apartheid activities. Union meetings have been forbidden. Strikes are impossible because of lengthy conciliation procedures, and strike benefits are illegal. Repressive labor legislation has been introduced. At the same time, many unions have found themselves desperately in need of funds for organizing, training, and equipment. Responding to these needs, the Service Employees International Union in 1985 established a Freedom Fund to help support emerging black unions in South Africa. The Service Employees Union had long supported disinvestment in South Africa and had participated wholeheartedly in public protests against apartheid. But the SEIU South Africa Freedom Fund has added a new and more meaningful dimension to the struggle, providing much needed hard cash to help pay salaries and organizer expenses, funds for steward and organizer training materials and trainers, for office equipment that is practically non-existent in union offices in South Africa, for transportation expenses for organizers, and for legal defense of organizers and members, as well as legal work in employer and legislative battles. Money from the Freedom Fund goes to 6 black trade unions that mirror the Service Employees Union membership: the Brushes and Cleaning Workers of South Africa, the Domestic Workers Association of South Africa, the Black Domestic Workers Association, the Vukani Guards and Allied Workers Union, the National Union of Public Service Workers, and the Black Health and Allied Workers Union of South Africa. When you give money to the Freedom Fund, you're helping these unions bring the protection and benefits of trade unionism to millions of South African workers who need and deserve it. But equally important, you're striking a direct and forceful blow against a political and economic system that enslaves all of us, just as it enslaves Black Africa.
I decided that, you know, there must be something that could be done about the situation of working on a VDT. There was a lot of noise. I had a printer about arm's length from my desk. And with the telephone and the printer, I couldn't hear. And between all this, I just figured something could be done.
When management seen that people were standing together and that they weren't going to do any work until, you know, they had respirators or the brake encapsulating machine, it really shook them up for a while.
Lois Yukas, Joe McKay, hard workers, doing their job, minding their own business, private people who found their public voice when they saw danger, when they learned their health and that of their co-workers was at risk, when they decided to do something about it. Is this familiar to you? You have a nagging fear that your VDT is dangerous, but no one else seems worried. And let's face it, it beats a typewriter. You're worried about the stuff you're breathing in, but you're not sure where to turn for help. Safety is the last thing in your employer's mind, and your local union has never taken on something like this. The other day, you stuck yourself with a needle that someone carelessly threw away, and you're damn scared, but haven't told anyone about it. Let's face it, work can be dangerous, even in today's modern service economy with so-called clean, safe environments. Today, millions of service workers face risks that are often harder to see than an open saw blade or black dust in a coal mine. For millions of employees in schools and other public and commercial buildings, there is exposure to flaking asbestos from ceilings, pipes, or boilers. There's indoor air pollution from fumes, tobacco smoke, and microbes circulating in the air of tight buildings with sealed shut windows, putting workers at the mercy of the ventilation system. For healthcare workers, there are the ever-present dangers of radiation, toxic chemicals, and infectious diseases like AIDS and hepatitis. And everywhere, there's stress, but it shows up most often among clericals and service workers dealing with the public. Is there something people can do? Certainly. Teamwork, technical support, enforcing a contract, knowing your rights under the law, backup from your union. These are the components for a winning strategy that have worked for thousands of service employee union members just like you. People who have faced up to their fears and faced down their employers and won the game against workplace hazards. On a recent morning at the Occupational Health Clinic of Cambridge Hospital in Massachusetts, doctors and technicians screened a group of 30 workers for early signs of lung damage from asbestos exposure.
Great, good, keep going, keep squeezing, that looks great, keep going, this is the best one so far. Keep going if you can, keep going if you can, keep going if you can, a little bit further, it's still climbing, keep going if you can, keep going if you can, a little bit further. Okay, stop. Great.
It was part of a program worked out between their employer, the Massachusetts Department of Public Works, and their union, Service Employees Locals 285 and 5000, NAGE.
As you're going to hear, smoking is one of the things which, along with asbestos exposure, can increase your risk to some of the asbestos-related diseases, specifically cancer.
They were mechanics for the most part, who worked on the fleet of state trucks, snow blowers, cars, payloaders. Some were brake mechanics who'd been exposed to airborne asbestos dust blown out of old brake drums.
A lot of people that have worked in the department here, especially in the garage for the last, say, 20 years, that have been doing the same brake and clutch work, and they never realized the problems with asbestos.
Alarmed about this practice, union leaders Joe McKay and John Mullen convinced their employer to hold education sessions about the hazards of asbestos.
It would take 1 million asbestos fibers to fill up that same inch.
Steve Schrag, one of SEIU's regional health and safety coordinators, was called in as a panelist.
Many people don't act on the hazards they face at work because they either believe it's always been that way and it always will be that way, or they think there's no safer way to do the job.
Schrag discussed encapsulating equipment on the market, that completely encloses the brake drum and through a vacuum sucks the asbestos dust into airtight containers, preventing the escape of tiny, dangerous fibers.
Members came up to me after the training session and asked me, well, what should we do at this point? And I basically said, well, you do in fact in your contract have the right to refuse dangerous work.
After the session was going on for a while, the mechanics and the people involved who work with asbestos said that, until we get the proper equipment, we cannot, expose ourselves.
And when they realized that they didn't have the proper equipment, the proper masks, the proper encapsulating machines, they just stopped. And this happened all across the state. Almost one garage after another stopped doing this. They virtually put down their tools.
But the thing that happened here was so great. After the training, the first couple of days, there was one individual who grabbed an air hose and tried to blow out the brake drum. There was 10 guys there within 1 minute, and they were gonna give him hell. But that's what happened. It takes things like that. It takes peer pressure, and we had it here, and it really worked.
It's always a pleasure to tell our people not to do anything until the safety equipment is there for them. And if the foreman don't like it, that's too bad about them. If they can go out and spend all kinds of money on parts and equipment, what about the people that are using that particular type of thing and doing the job for them? Bottom line shouldn't be money, it's the safety.
The work stoppage succeeded. It had the support of some middle-level managers who were alarmed themselves after learning of the long-term damage asbestos can have on the lungs. The Labor Management Committee met again and came up with a plan. And within 6 months, the encapsulating machines were installed.
Our members, by taking direct action, created a crisis that management had to solve, and they solved it. And in 6 months, those machines were delivered. That's pretty unheard of when it comes to state bureaucracies to move that fast.
You can go and look back and say, well, why didn't we do it 5 years before? The fact of the matter is, when we started to work on it, through the interests of the union and through the interests of the management carried the ball, got up the money, and it is a fairly expensive proposition and hard to work things through the budget process in a governmental unit. And I think our management deserves a lot of credit along with the people in the union.
The day the encapsulating machines arrived here, it was like a 4th of July celebration. It was really terrific because a lot of people were so skeptical for so long, but they realized that from sticking together and, really standing tall, that this would really happen. It was something that it made them feel good. It was showed, real unity, strength within the union.
If you're saying to yourself, well, that could happen in Massachusetts, but it could never happen where I work, think again. The local at the DPW had never had particular success on a health and safety project before. They were cynical about management's intention and perhaps their own unity. But they worked through a structure already in place, a labor management committee, and they called in the International to back them up with on-site workplace inspection, with educational materials, with technical expertise, especially about the equipment, and through educational seminars for leadership and members. And they used the law. For clerical workers at the University of New Haven, the road to a safer workplace followed a rockier course. Winning VDT protections was part of a 4-year struggle to win a first contract by District 9 to 5, facing a hostile university administration. Lois Yukas was a VDT operator and an early member of the organizing committee.
I was getting headaches, like stiff neck, eye strain, a lot of eye strain, a lot of distortion. When I would look up, things wouldn't look like they're supposed to, but because of staring at a screen for long lengths of time.
After getting nowhere with her supervisor, Lois talked to other operators.
They were having the same problems. Their eyes were hurting them, their necks were hurting them, the lighting was not good. So that's when we decided that there should be some kind of guidelines for the whole university, not just for me in my office, but the whole university to go by.
With technical assistance from the International's Health and Safety Department, 9 to 5 drew up VDT language.
We proposed contract language at the negotiating table, which we hope to have included in our first contract. However, some of the issues, especially the potential hazards of radiation for VDTs, was not really agreed to by the university. So we sort of agreed to a compromise in the contract, which allowed us to create VDT guidelines as part of a subcommittee from the Health and Safety Committee.
The union insisted that VDT operators sit on the committee. Along with Lois Yukas was Maria DeLise.
They're the ones primarily using these new technical machines, and consequently they're the most knowledgeable. They're the ones that pick up the factor that the sound should be muted, the light should be correct. They're the ones affected by all this.
Guidelines give people something to go by. They don't have to guess if they want to take a break from their desk or if something isn't right.
Not only did the guidelines spell out eye exams, scheduled breaks, and transfers off VDTs during pregnancy, they required the university to set aside $10,000 to retrofit every VDT workstation on campus.
We've gotten the screening, we've got the proper chairs, the correct workstations, noise cover for the printer, radiation shielding, because no one really knows how much radiation is coming from VDTs.
When employees began to see the equipment arriving and the workstations being upgraded, I think that they really were surprised, and they sat back and said, wow, the union is doing something concrete here. People who didn't really even support the union or believe in a union to begin with said, wow, the union's concerned about our health, they're concerned about where we work and what we're doing on our jobs.
I really can't say how it was. I can just remember the faces of the girls who worked so hard with me, what we really had accomplished.
Well, we have a voice. We're finally being heard. The clerical people at the University of New Haven are finally being heard by the administration. In other words, we don't have doors shut in our face any longer.
I think that most people at the university, especially those who have been actively involved in the union, do have a great sense of pride, not only in their jobs and what they do for the university as employees, but in themselves. They've really accomplished a lot in the last 4 years with the service employees, and it gives them a great sense of pride and accomplishment. The union helps to foster a respect which people have within them.
Private people finding their public voice, changing their working conditions, changing themselves, building for the present, and leaving a legacy for the future. A lot of work to be done, and some very special people to do it. The Service Employees International Union.
These stories show us how our members can work together to eliminate hazards in the workplace, that these hazards are not just part of the job, and that accidents and injuries are not caused by careless workers. The International is ready to assist local unions in health and safety efforts in many ways, which include materials, expertise, and staff at a regional level. We also have a manual which outlines the strategies and the techniques that are necessary for a good health and safety program. And it's available to every local union, and we encourage the members to use this program. Workers' involvement is crucial to a clean and safe workplace. It's important that we press employers to live up to their responsibilities, that we educate ourselves, our co-workers, our members and their families about health and safety issues. And it's important also in strengthening our local unions.